You mentioned that there's 4 areas where you would like the state to be more helpful from a capital perspective to the city. If I could request a meeting offline to get more detail and how I could be helpful, I look forward to doing that, and I can work with Jeff Lynch to set that up.
We would welcome that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then for DEP, I do want to also mention, I'm sorry, you also seek the state's partnership on major projects on the regular roadways like the Brooklyn, Queensboro bridges, and the street projects like Queens Boulevard, Arthur Kill. I also want to throw in a plug for Atlantic Avenue, which is in my district. I've done some work during my time. I invested $2 million to start a project there for pedestrian safety. It's now being leveraged with federal funds as we undergo a rezoning. If we can keep that on the map and if state fundings can be helpful there, I'd love to discuss that with you in our private
Thank you.
meeting as well.
That'd be welcome.
Okay, and for DEP, similar question. I see there's state funding of about $1.4 billion for sewers. In my district, we have a lot of combined systems, which during heavy rains create tons of problems for my constituents, tons of calls, and not the best phone calls coming in to a district office. If we could just identify some parts of my districts that could benefit from this funding, that would be a tremendous relief for me. I've worked on it my entire time in the council, 12 years. We've seen some relief, but not the relief that my constituents deserve. And also, the current East New York rezoning project has a combined system. It works well now, but it's largely manufacturing use. As we add, potentially 20 to 50,000 new residents as a result of rezoning, I believe the combined system is going to be inadequate. So I just want to flag that for you and look forward to working with you on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, we'd be happy to meet on that. DEP is developing long-term control plans for its combined sewer system, and we could share those details with you.
Okay, thank you.
Assemblyman Van Laan, thank you. Commissioner, before you leave, just 2 quick questions, hopefully quick, on a personal nature here from my district. I represent a shoreline community. It's always been talked about, and we know we have service from Manhattan to New Jersey by ferry and from Manhattan to Queens by ferry. And certainly it's been talked about at various points here in the Bronx to use Ferry Point, Sound View, possibly near Orchard Beach, to ferry people into Manhattan for the transportation needs. I guess my question is twofold. Number one, are there plans on the books going forward for that type of service? And secondly, it's always been my personal opinion that service like that, as valuable as it might be, will never happen unless we could make it very rapid service. Right now, using a ferry, you probably would take an hour and a half to get to Manhattan, just too long. I would think something, a hydrofoil or something like that. Is that anything remotely in the works that you know of?
Well, the city, as you probably know, we sort of have 2 ways we approach ferries. First of all, New York City DOT, we run the Staten Island ferry. It's a municipal ferry. Secondly, the Economic Development Corporation has helped support a privately operated ferry, which is the East River Ferry, and as you know, is now expanding ferry routes all over the city with Soundview on the list. And I just have a note here that says Soundview will be 2018, so still a couple years away. But in the meanwhile, I think we and certainly EDC continue to hear from all kinds of neighborhoods in the city. A growing interest is, can we have more ferry service? And I think it's something we're going to continue looking at. The challenge of the fast versus the slow is finding, one of the challenges in ferry service is getting the right size boat to accommodate the demand. Super fast ferries can often be a lot more expensive to operate, but you sort of have to, I don't think there's a one size fits all. You have to look at each route and decide what kind of ridership you're going to have and what's the best way to serve that ridership that'll be as cost effective and time savings as it can be.
And lastly, we all know the Metro North, the 4 stations that might be coming to the Bronx, but it all depends on the East Side Access project that's going on right now, how we're doing with that. And I've heard so many rumors. It's supposed to be done in 2021 or 2025. No, it's really ahead of schedule. It might be done by 18. Any insight there?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as an MTA board member, I get to hear essentially a monthly presentation on the progress of that, and I would want to be careful to talk to the MTA before I gave you the latest deadline. Certainly, it is a project that has taken a very, very long time. But that said, to get to work on the Metro North Penn Station access and the 4 stations in the Bronx, we want to, you know, we need to start getting that project underway even as East Side Access is making its way. And again, part of the reason why I think we feel some urgency on the capital plan, on the MTA capital plan.
Thank you. We appreciate your time, Commissioner. We thank you for being here. I know your schedule is busy, so Commissioner Trottenberg, we thank you. Deputy Commissioner Sapienza and Varoli, we thank you very much for your time and your insight, and most of all for your fine testimony.
Thank you all.
Going forward, we want to help. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
We are with us today, yes, the mayor of one of the cities that abut the Bronx. Okay, we heard from the mayor of New Rochelle, and we are fortunate enough to have the mayor of Mount Vernon with us today, the newly elected mayor of Mount Vernon, the Honorable Richard Thomas. Mayor Thomas, thank you for coming here. We hope your first month and a half in office has been interesting, and we look forward to hearing your remarks about how you think the state could help your city.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee. And you know, all I can say is I really appreciate the opportunity for you to create an opportunity for Mount Vernon to speak. Before I arrived here, I placed a call to our Assembly member, Assemblyman Gary Pretlow, who's the dean of our delegation in Westchester, and just left him a message saying that we're about to provide testimony, and I thank him for his continued support. And it's great to see, you know, Assemblyman Rodriguez. I remember years ago when I was working in the governor's office, you know, seeing him, you know, rise up to the challenge, and just seeing everybody here today has been, you know, very refreshing. But with respect to the city of Mount Vernon, I have some remarks that we prepared. I'd like to reserve the right to provide you with some more details in the very near future. But with respect to some of the challenges we face as a smaller urban city, we're 4 square miles, but we're dense. It's about 20,000 people per square mile. So you're looking at roughly 75,000 people packed in 4 square miles. And we have all the challenges of an inner city, but we also have the challenges of a suburb, be it property taxes are high, be it that our infrastructure is aging, and we have dynamics that are just out of our immediate control. So one of the things that I wanted to do was just talk with you about how we can elevate the debate and identify ways where cities like Mount Vernon can find opportunities to leverage the resources you send down, be it CHIPS money, be it AIM, whichever the pot that is available. What can we do on the local level to say we're going to receive $5 million in CHIPS, or we're going to receive X amount in AIM, and how can we coordinate our activities to either have our capital, be it through a ban or a bond or other financing mechanisms, to move at the same speed. And one of the things that I think would be helpful is having some form of stronger coordination. This way, when the resources are available and they come down, they're ready to go. They're not. You're not waiting to see if we're going to use it, and we're not waiting for it to arrive. It can be just more of a harmonious transition. As for some new revenue sources, I think could always be helpful. As you know, being outside of New York City, property taxes in the Hudson Valley, in Westchester in specific, in Mount Vernon, we have a unique challenge. Our revenue source for the city of Mount Vernon, we get approximately 70% of our revenue from our homeowners, our property owners. And my challenge, my job, is to try and tilt the equation going toward growing the economy. That's a longer-term challenge. So my funding streams are extremely constrained. Mount Vernon is among the highest taxed cities in the state. That's not something I'm proud of, but that's something I'm inheriting. And I'm looking at other cities around the nation to figure out what did they do to try and either get private sector involved, homeowners involved, to kind of reimagine and rework their local economy. So I'm looking at Oklahoma City. I'm looking at what Portland, Oregon, and Seattle is doing. And one of the things that I think the state of New York can be truly helpful on is looking at ways where we as a city can possibly add a gasoline tax to enable us to use the monies for our roads, just dedicated to our roads. That will help us better afford and better plan for making improvements. And for a city like Mount Vernon, we're 4 square miles, 100 miles of pavement, and our roads are more used. We have the highest emissions rate in the lower Hudson Valley, approximately 120,000 per square mile, metric tons, 120,000 metric tons of carbon per square mile. And that's something that contributes to asthma, contributes to all the other health issues that we confront. But when you step back and look at what we've done, Mount Vernon, again, this is another challenge. We're working on developing some capital plans, some new capital planning that spaces out the investment. So if we know CHIPS is coming at a certain time of year, we can say our capital plan will match that allocation and we'll put it to work right away. This way, when the resources arrive, they're working and you can see that utility. But one of the new innovative things that I'd like to share with you that we've tried out in the past 40 days of my administration is crowdsourcing information. We've introduced the prospect of using hashtags in social media to kind of track and interact with the public. We use hashtag PotholeMV to find potholes in the city and see if we can find clusters that our DPW or our other agencies have identified as issues and see if there's some information sharing we can do. And we're averaging approximately 30 to 40 potholes a day that we identify through social media that we're fixing and discovering different types of problems. Problems including sewers underground. Many of our sewers are in need of relining. Approximately 50% of our sewer infrastructure needs to be relined. Now, this is something, again, it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen in 10 years. It happened, over 20 years or more. And we are facing some challenges from the EPA where they may have some mandates of their own that require infrastructure improvements at a city like Mount Vernon being, majority minority, but also being high taxed, but having a very stressed income stream from a revenue standpoint. It's hard for us as a city to go to market or go to our public saying we need more money to fix something when they don't have the money. So I know everybody here is crying poverty, but part of the challenge is, and I think this is where the state can be very helpful, is identifying a way to either convince the EPA to fund some of their mandates for fixing sewers that are in disrepair, joining with us to find a new creative program, be it with the Environmental Facilities Corporation, to see if there's some lower dollar or some loans that we can get that have a less of a premium attached to it. This way we can go in and fix the critical spots and help a city like Mount Vernon rise again. And I can tell you stories of homeowners that are scattered throughout the city, north side, west side, east side, west. They have to stand in their basement whenever it rains because whatever's upstream or up the block comes right down into their basement. They have to activate their sub pumps. So it may be a function of energy efficiency, finding ways to make it easier for homeowners to access, weatherization funds, because we need our technology to be smarter. And I know that the state has a lot of resources for weatherization. Perhaps there's a way to make it easier for regular homeowners or building owners to access that money and say, look, we're going to put some smart pumps in, and that's going to help us from having to stand in our basement at night with a bucket to bail out water and other things that come in from the sewer. So we want to be creative and open to as many opportunities. Part of it may be cutting some red tape. Part of it may be using social media differently. But we want to make sure that technology is also included in infrastructure. Our police department needs a serious investment for infrastructure. Our fire department as well. Our DPW. I was with the president and his staff a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about how technology debt, technical debt is the term that they use. Mount Vernon has about 20 to 30 years of technical debt. Most of the technological infrastructure we have doesn't communicate with one another. And if we are to build a better city, we really need to invest in our technology. And I look around and I see what Nassau County did, Nassau County Police Department in specific. they invested heavy in infrastructure, technological infrastructure, because they have a control review board for their finances, and they have, you know, the dynamic of very constrained resources. Their police department went from about 3,000 people down to 2,200 people in the span of 10 years, let's say. And what they did was they backfilled it with technology. They made their department smarter. They invested in various resources to have a more intelligent, driven approach to resolving crime. And that's something that a city like Mount Vernon could really benefit from if there was a broader approach to looking at how we can invest in that type of infrastructure. I mentioned our sewers, and I'll end on Memorial Field. Memorial Field is parkland in Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon only has about 1% free parkland. That's it, 1%. And of all the parks, Memorial Field is our biggest park. It is about approximately 12 acres, and it was closed for the past 6 years. It's been the subject of, you know, political football per se, but unfortunately, it's something that's means a lot to me as a Mount Vernonite. I played football there as a kid, played football there in high school, and if you watch the Super Bowl this past weekend, I'm a Giants fan, so, you know, all I could say is good luck to the Broncos and Manning. But nonetheless, the Mean Joe Green commercial was shot at Memorial Field, and it has a historic value, especially coming from Mount Vernon, being a hub of media and entertainment. Humphrey Bogart, Nina Simone, Heavy D, P. Diddy, Lou Esposito, the president of Marvel Comics, Marvel Movie Studios out in California now. A lot of people from media and entertainment come from Mount Vernon. LaShawn's, J.B. Smoove from Curb Your Enthusiasm. We have a very deep connection to you know, sports and athleticism. Our basketball team is ranked in the top 25 in the country, top 10 in the state. And athleticism is what keeps kids safe and off the streets. Our parkland is going to be critical to that. So I hope that as we, as a city, engage the issue of Memorial Field, it has become a victim of illegal dumping. We are working with the DEC on how to remediate and clean up the park. But if there's monies available in the Environmental Protection Fund, or if there are programs through other, you know, state parks budgets that you're looking to enhance, it would be very helpful to keep in mind that there are things that happen in communities, particularly Mount Vernon, where our largest park is closed because of illegal dumping and some other things that the community simply had no participation in. So we're working very closely with the DEC. We're collaborating with the County of Westchester. I've spoken with our county executive on a number of occasions. He has softened up to release monies that the county has set aside to help Mount Vernon renovate the park. But we're going to need to have a longer dialogue and a longer debrief on what is possible for a small but mighty city like Mount Vernon to leverage resources from the state, to leverage resources that we have, leverage community will to participate. And I will say that in the past storm, we're very thankful to the state. We're very thankful to Governor Cuomo for supporting us in the past blizzard. And I want to just point out that collaboration is our new operating principle. We are going to collaborate. And through the blizzard, typically Mount Vernon has a tough time shoveling or plowing snow because our equipment is aging, it's dilapidated. As I mentioned before, we haven't had a capital plan in about 20 years. Again, all things I'm going to work on and we're going to get accomplished. But we were able to resuscitate our dead trucks to plow snow, but we got help from the school district for the first time ever. The school district plowed snow on city streets. And that type of collaboration is what, you know, has a community energized. And for the first time, again, unlike New York City, we have a separate school district. I'm sure you may know this, but I just want to make clear that we're going to continue to collaborate in every way possible. There was no cost to the taxpayer for the school district plowing city streets, the narrow, vexing side streets that everybody agonizes over. We were able to do a lot more because the governor was able to provide us with some additional equipment, some snow blowers, some monster snow blowers. I mean, like huge, really, really big snow blowers, really nice. And I hope that the state DOT decides to use Mount Vernon as a parking lot for their equipment in the wintertime. Be great. We're close to New York City. We're close to Queens. We're close to everywhere. So just know that Mount Vernon is ready to do its part to, be a hub for equipment. But I do thank you for the time and the audience and the opportunity to engage you in dialogue. And I look forward to coming back to you again. And hopefully our collaboration, our approach to coordinating our resources will create economic value for our residents and our constituents. And we can show the world that we can govern possible. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for your testimony. Mount Vernon being right next to my district, it's extremely important to me, and certainly your remarks in regards to Memorial Field resonates. I spent a lot of time there back in my college days when Iona would play, on that field. And driving by now, I see masses of stone and rock and dirt, and it's really heartbreaking, and we would like to be able to help on that. So you mentioned the gasoline
Yes.
tax. You made reference to that.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
Sure.
What do you have in mind?
So the cost of energy today is at an all-time low, the wholesale price. Because, new techniques to create new supply for gasoline, be it heating fuel, be it gasoline, we are no longer in the day of $4, $5 gallon gasoline. We're now back at $1.90, $1.80. We're back at $2 gas, which is great. So there's capacity to potentially introduce a new revenue tool for cities like Mount Vernon that are urban and have density challenges. Our roads are used more. It will be very helpful to be similar to the state where we can put a tax on the gasoline, not the sales tax, because the sales tax is something that can be subject to some accounting creativity by some of the gas stations, which is fine. But nonetheless, if we're able to tap into that, even on a temporary basis, to show that the consumers will benefit if for example, we're able to dedicate a stream of revenue for each municipality that has a form of a gas tax included in the cost of the gallon, we could theoretically enhance CHIPS. We can enhance a program by saying here's an additional revenue flow. However, it must be tied to resurfacing. It must be tied to beautification, and just make it very difficult for some clever public officials to find a way to use the money for something else. And my hope is that there's a discussion going on at all levels of government, and I hope that we can have this one, and perhaps even if it's on a temporary basis, like some electricity taxes that are out there. Some electricity taxes, could be reconsidered, repurposed, reused. I'm just pointing out as an example of how we find ways through utilities to finance public needs. And my hope is that for a city like Mount Vernon that really hasn't had a road resurfacing capital plan per se since the late 80s, it will be helpful for us to identify new revenue streams without going to our homeowners saying, here's another tax, here's another tax. Thank you very much, here's another tax. And we're going to do our best to create value, but having a new revenue stream like a gas, an ability to be within, embedded, entrenched into the cost of gasoline would be very helpful.
So you would like, I just want to clarify, the city of Mount Vernon to be able to impose a local tax on
Gasoline,
gasoline.
diesel, absolutely.
Okay. I asked of one of the other mayors, I guess it was Mayor Kennedy, many of the people in our conference, many of the mayors that we've talked to upstate are frustrated with the 2% tax cap.
Mm-hmm.
They would like, they say it's just not enough. And in reality, it becomes a 1.2% tax cap. They would like a real 2% tax cap. Your opinions on that? You mentioned Mount Vernon high taxed. Are you in favor of something like that, or would you be in favor of something like that?
So I was a member of the council for the past few years, and I voted to try and inflict discipline. And I use the word inflict deliberately because the practices of previous administrations, and this is not a judgment, this is not an indictment, this is just what it was. My belief is the budget is a moral document, and our budget, in particular, was not, in my opinion, structured properly that addressed the issues that we just discussed. For example, what happened, particularly with the tax cap this year in Mount Vernon, it was 0.875%, which made it very difficult for us to address some of the challenges we had. The tax rate that was passed in the budget that was passed, and just to be clear, I voted against it. It was about a 2.5% tax on the community. Now, the challenge that the tax cap does present is the choices you have to make, and it's part of again, inflicting discipline on municipalities, particularly school districts that are just out of control with their spending. I share the sympathy of being limiting choices, and what I will add is that I believe there may be another approach that involves setting the right priorities from the local level, and the tax cap definitely makes it a challenge. But I know I'm eager to see how, when we construct our budget in the next few months, what we can do to either at this point in time comply with the state rule. But if we cannot, rest assured that we're going to pursue every revenue opportunity, be it grants, be it innovative programs, be it leveraging resources, be it collaboration, coordination. And I'll give you a quick example. Yonkers, Mount Vernon, and New Rochelle collaborated and applied for a grant together. And these are things that we're going to continue to do to try and create new opportunities. But with respect to the tax cap, I think that discipline is the only way to bring about change. And in Mount Vernon, it definitely hurt us to have that 0.875, but it cost us dearly in public safety. We had to really make some choices that I believe could have been avoided, but nonetheless, it's a very difficult rule to comply with.
Thank you. Assemblyman Rodriguez?
Thank you, Mayor Thomas, and I appreciate the consideration of new revenue sources as being an opportunity for us to make some direct investments. And I think that's some of the things that we're thinking about. I think I introduced legislation, and I'm curious to hear your feedback as we potentially look at the regulation of for-hire vehicles and Uber and different forms of transportation. One of the things that we're considering is either a direct investment, into the MTA for those that are downstate, but potentially as you figure out how to deal with these on the local municipal level, that could be a potential revenue stream for investing in your roads and bridges. So that's an idea for the record, for other mayors and other cities to consider and to provide feedback as to whether or not this is a viable solution as you deal with the local considerations for how you address that existing in your municipalities and localities. The gas tax, I think, is also something that we've looked at as a statewide level, but not specifically in terms of how it gets dedicated. So I appreciate the suggestion, and I'm sure we'll share that with Assemblymember Brennan, who has a gas tax bill, and work with him on that as well. Additional ways that we have and continue to look at investment and are always welcome to new ideas from our mayors is, with the use of settlement funds and how we dedicate and appropriate that for infrastructure and how we define what that infrastructure use should be. So I appreciate your idea, and I just wanted to share and solicit your feedback on some other ideas and continue the dialogue.
Well, I thank you, and I'll just add, I'm also open to, a carbon tax. Being Mount Vernon, one of our biggest cost drivers, even for the state, is healthcare. And knowing that we have the highest emissions, I think that, again, having the capacity even in a temporary pilot basis, let's try it out, see if it works. And I can assure you that if we want to move to a clean fleet system, such as electric cars or even cars powered by or trucks powered by natural gas, people, in the Bronx, in Asthma Alley, going down 95 through, what is that, the Cross Bronx, in Queens and Van Wyck. You know, everybody, you know, we could use some fresh air. And I think that, again, discipline is the only way to bring about change, and I'm open to being an advocate for these, you know, these vexing, you know, things to get through, because I know there are a lot of voices on both sides. But with respect to a city like Mount Vernon, asthma, emphysema, 1% parkland, you know, very little trees, it can go a long way toward you know, addressing some other cost factors that people suffer in silence about. And I say, you know, whatever it takes to push and try new things, you can consider me a partner in that.
Thank you. Assemblyman Delan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations on your election, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
You said in your testimony that about 70% of your city's revenue comes from the property tax.
Yes.
And I wanted to just, I'm unfamiliar with your city, wanted to talk to you about the city's housing infrastructure. Is abandonment a big problem in your city?
Yes, and in fact, about a week ago, the blizzard, or 2 weeks ago, the blizzard damaged one of the zombie homes. And just for the record, the city was pretty aggressive on following up with the homeowner about the state of disrepair their home was in, going back as to 2012. So we knocked down and demolished a zombie, and we do have approximately that we can count on, you know, that we are aware of 54 properties in our city that are, you know, zombies. And what we are introducing, using the existing rules we have in our books and being a bit more aggressive on this issue, is trying to convert these abandoned lands into community gardens. We met with Volunteer Westchester and Habitat for Humanity recently about how we can partner and team up on trying to go after grants to empower neighborhoods to clean up these abandoned lots. And it would be incredibly helpful if you know, the state were to have just a dedicated fund to help knock down some of these zombie homes and to help maintain the upkeep of some of these properties. And what I can tell you is that the community will do the work. We just need some additional resources. And again, being creative and trying to collaborate and coordinate, we can connect it to the court system in terms of having juveniles that need a second chance, or connected to, you know, those on probation. Just make it part of their work. You have to clean this up. If you're going to grow something, you know, each one teach one. And this is something that, you know, I believe is a huge opportunity to get back to some basics. And I'd really like to you know, follow up on making sure that, you know, that Mount Vernon is dealing with this issue. We have some homes that have been burned out for 10 years, just sitting there. And I can tell you that being a neighbor to one of the zombies, it's unnecessary, and I believe that we can play some offense on this issue.